Hi. Okay. Let's see, Theresa. Oh, there she is. Hello. Hi, everybody. My name is Tailinh Agoyo, and this is Rise and Thrive, Indigenous Art, Culture, and Joyful Acts of Resistance on Usula Media. And today I am here with Theresa Secord. Theresa Secord is a basket maker and geologist from the Penobscot Nation in Maine. She co-founded and was the director of the Maine Indian Basket Makers Alliance. Secord founded the Maine Indian Basket Makers Alliance as a way to preserve Wabanaki language and culture. Her work has received enormous accolades, showing in museums and prestigious art shows throughout the world. She is the 2016 National Endowment for the Arts National Heritage Fellow. On Saturday, she'll be showing and selling her work at the Abbey Museum's first ever digital Indian market. Welcome to Theresa Secord. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you, Tailinh.
I love your setup. It's so beautiful. So you're in your home now because we're all under quarantine, and you're preparing for this Abbey Museum Digital Indian Market, which starts tomorrow but goes through Saturday, I believe. Can you talk about what your involvement is and how you are preparing?
Sure, yes. Well, first of all, thanks for inviting me. It's
Absolutely.
a real pleasure to be here. And just to back up on the Maine Indian Basket Makers Alliance, we actually founded to preserve the ash and sweetgrass basketry here in Maine, and together with a number of elders from the 4 tribes here, Micmac, Maliseet, Passamaquoddy, and Penobscot. So I just wanted to kind of
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm really excited about the digital Indian market. Of course, in person, like most of this work is better, but this is an opportunity that the Abbey Museum wanted to extend to us, to try to salvage, basically this market and this opportunity too for Native artists to connect with their market and also to learn how to present digitally. Many Native artists are not online, and we really need to be physically. This market should be happening for the 3rd annual time in the historic setting of Bar Harbor, Maine, which you're familiar with. And
Yes.
It would be a cold and raw weekend, but a great outdoor show on an island in the Atlantic Ocean off the coast of Maine. So
that's right.
this is very, very different to be in our homes like this.
Mm-hmm. Yes, the museum show is a great community gathering, and it has such a great family feeling, and to be able to interact with artists and actually have space to talk to them about their work was such an opportunity. And so it's interesting to make this transition. And you said that you will be presenting a PowerPoint that you want to share with us here today, and then we can lead more into discussion about the show and your work in general. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Why don't I launch into that, because I'm aware too that people aren't really familiar with the ash and sweetgrass basketry tradition here in Maine that is historic. And also, just before I forget, this collaboration with the Abbey Museum goes back almost 3 decades, where even though the May Indian market is fairly new and invites artists from tribes across the nation, we have been partnering the Maine Indian Basket Makers Alliance with the Abbey Museum since, the late 1980s, early 90s to hold a market in July. And so
that's right.
And that leads into, the PowerPoint too, and some points I'll make there. So we'll go right into that now.
Great. So for those who are listening just on audio, we'll try our best to describe what's on the slides. I think we'll be able to pull that off. And then Theresa will give us some background on the slides. And then following that, we can expand on it.
Okay, perfect. Yes, thanks again. And I forget that the podcast is an important piece here, so I'll make sure that I describe what I'm showing.
That will be great.
So I am a member of the Penobscot Nation, and I'm showing on the screen now an historic business card that belonged to my great-great-grandfather. Many of us in the 4 tribes in Maine come from multiple generations of basket makers, but not just the artists, also the entrepreneurial aspect. And so this is a piece of a really cool business card that I'm showing. It says fancy Indian baskets, bows, arrows, and canoes. And I'll show the rest of the card later on in the presentation, but it talks about the primary location being on Indian Island, Maine, which is an island in the Penobscot River near Old Town, Maine, about 150 miles north of Portland. And so that's just for reference. The next photo I'm showing is, this is a historic picture in my family and tribe, and it's my great-grandmother with a table full of baskets, and she's selling her baskets, and the sign says Indian baskets sold here. And she's actually holding a sewing basket, and I only wish I could have like this many baskets on the table at one time. You know, as Tailinh showed my market photo of my little baskets in the background, there's like 3.
Right. You know, I love this photo, and I've known you for a very long time, and have seen you at many shows, and you bring this photo and put it on your table, and I always felt like it was so, it pulled everything that you do together, and it's so meaningful. I always appreciated this, and it gives everybody context.
Right. And so for context too, I'm going to be working with the Portland Museum of Art next year. Well, I'm working on an exhibition now, but like everything, you know, it's a bit on hold, the research.
Right.
And the theme of the exhibition is Indigenous women entrepreneurship in Maine through the Wabanaki basketry. And so here, this photo shows my great-grandmother with amazing presents, you know, holding this sewing basket and this table where not only did these women weave the baskets, but in my research, I'm finding photo after photo dating back as early as 1870. And I know historically reading the selling in Bar Harbor dates back to 1840 from Bunny McBride's book.
That is incredible.
And so this is, you know, nearly 200 years of entrepreneurship. What I find amazing is not just the making of these, what we call quote unquote fancy baskets, which was on the card earlier, but also the selling. And so to me, this really is a reminder to us in these times, you know, of the sovereignty that we project through our art, and the, you know, and the sovereignty of economic self-sufficiency. You know, these are hard times for Native basket makers, and they managed to plug into the tourism economy here in Maine, and have been part of this, what they call the cottage industry, for decades. And so the tourism industry in Maine is really hurting for the summer. The predictions are, you know, with the quarantines and everything. And so with the Abbey Museum Indian Market, I think we're the first ones to be nimble, you know, and start to move online and say, you know what, this tourism event, which would be one of the first ones happening in Maine, in Bar Harbor in May, is not happening. So, you know, Chris Newell and Jill Sawyer and the others at the Abbey Museum, and of course, you know, Chris, he's Passamaquoddy, the new director, and he said, you know what, we're going online. So exciting.
It's brilliant.
Okay, so just some of my work too, and this basket is behind me. You know, this is also the year, and this is kind of a bust of the Maine bicentennial. And so that's a 200-year birthday of the state of Maine. And of course, as Indigenous people, we don't really celebrate that in the same way that, you know, most of Maine citizens would. But as a nod to that, a number of us have worked on exhibitions in Maine, because this is, you know, especially in 2019, and I'm glad they happened. And so this is our opportunity again, as the first people of Maine, to showcase the oldest art forms in Maine and our history, you know, in this culture, and our long, again, presence and self-determination through our culture and through our art. So this is a replica glove box that I wove, and it's identical to one that my great-grandmother made that we have in the personal collection. I used all the tools and wooden forms, and so I was lucky enough to win a second place on this.
This is incredible.
Oh, thanks so much.
Beautiful.
Woven ash, it's a oblong woven box, and basically with a cover and a sweetgrass handle. And so it's woven ash and braided sweetgrass. And so we pick the sweetgrass at the coast in the summers, and we braid it into ropes on the backs of chairs, and then weave it
Oh,
with the ash into the, and I make that
incredible.
sound easy, but a lot is in
No,
the
no.
wood preparation. And so,
Yes, of course.
yeah, but also the term glove box goes back to these Victorian baskets. So the women were weaving these what are called fancy baskets around the Victorian times in the 1800s. So again, dating back almost 200 years, where you see the indigenous basket makers of Maine starting to adapt and have, the men still are making the baskets for hunting and fishing and gathering. You'll find these pack baskets that fit on the back of, men and fit in the bow of the birch bark canoe. So these big woven baskets that particularly people still use here in Maine for ice fishing traps. And so those are still made. Those are very traditional and probably thousands of years old. But yet this fancy basket tradition coming up on a couple hundred years old. And so this basket is a nod to that, and a replica where ladies' gloves would have been kept in this box. And so back to Bar Harbor and the other coastal resorts, and even the Poland Spring House, where my teacher grew up, Madeline Tomachet, who was my mentor. She basically grew up there in a summer Indian camp. And so the tribal people were making these baskets for the big houses on the coast of Maine. And people would take them back to Massachusetts as well. But mostly when the summer people like the Rockefellers came, the Astors, the Carnegies to Bar Harbor, there was an Indian encampment in Bar Harbor for several generations, where basket makers were selling direct to the public. So in the late 80s, early 90s, when we had this resurgence in the basketry tradition, that was one of the first things we did, was bring a strong basketry market to Bar Harbor. And as a result, there were, again, not as simple as that, but a couple of generations later, and a lot of the elders who helped form the Maine Indian Basket Makers Alliance had this vision. And now sadly they're gone, but it's come true with these younger basket makers selling in national art markets and of course in Bar Harbor. And so some of them, like Sarah Sockbeeson, Gabriel Frey, Jennifer Neptune, will all be on the Indian market this weekend. So hoping people will tune in.
That's very exciting.
So backing up just a tiny bit on this PowerPoint, I'm showing a wooden form that this glove box was woven on, and again, handed down through my family. Probably this wooden form probably dates back to the 1800s, and that's my great-grandmother's initials on the gauge.
Amazing.
These are other wooden forms that are in my collection and in my basement, and so they range in all ages. The darker ones have the dark patina. They're quite a bit older. You see this barrel shape in the bottom corner right on my screen is a shape that showed up on several of the baskets in the photo of my great-grandmother's work.
Right.
Then, I have replicas too, like Jeremy Frey, who's one of the most recognized Native American basket makers. Yes. Passamaquoddy has won the Best of Show in Santa Fe and the Herd Market twice. He actually made some replica barrel forms for me, which are on the top shelf, and those are exactly scaled down from my great-grandmother's model. So again, like he's such an innovative weaver, and that's a whole different thing we can talk about, how successful and amazing he is as an artist in his 30s, but also these wooden forms that we're bringing them into the present too. And I guess the other thing I wanted to point out is that some of these wooden forms have decorative, Native American carving on them, decorative like tribal forms. And then there's one in the center that I'm showing that has some red paint on it.
I see that.
I did some research, and if anybody out there knows about Necco wafers, those kind of chalky candy, this was the New England Confectionery Company. And so the tribal people, again, maybe my great-grandfather or one of my great-uncles, use this piece of wood from a crate from the early 1900s and sawed it off and made it into a wooden form for my great-grandmother's basket. And so I'm actually going to make a basket on that soon. And I bought like some of those chalky Necco wafers as
Oh,
a nostalgia thing just before
I
they went
loved
out of
those
business.
as a kid. Yeah, I
Yeah,
love
so
those. Wow,
but
this is a beautiful collection.
thanks. And showing too how innovative, the Indigenous people were, in the marketing, in the making, in the tool
Hmm.
making. These are again some of my great grandmother's tools, and these are what are called gauges. So these are wooden tools that fit in my hand, and on the ends are these little teeth, and the teeth are made of clock spring or watch spring. Those blades are sharpened so that they cut the ash wood when I'm making my different widths and for different
Okay.
beads and
Okay.
pieces. And so
And these are very decorative too.
they are, and they're historic now, and so I dare not use them. I've had
Hmm.
some replicas made, yeah, the traditional chip carving that you see,
Hmm.
particularly in the Penobscot and Passamaquoddy tribes here, and then the one in the center has a face on it, which I think is just amazing. It's like a spirit in the wood,
Hmm.
and again, you see that traditionally too, and some of the um, root clubs that are made here and other, really old walking sticks and things. And then I like how there's a patina, but also where my great grandmother's thumb would have been on this tool, I could see where
Oh,
it's kind of shiny and lighter
that
colored,
is
and
phenomenal.
there's even a dip on the one. And so,
Wow.
yeah, and so these are all really, really special to me and part of family collection. And so next in the PowerPoint, I'm showing another basket,
So,
mostly braided sweetgrass that's woven on a wooden form.
Teresa, we're going
For
to
sure.
take a break and
Okay,
then we'll continue on with the presentation after the break. This is
sounds good.
Rise and Thrive, Indigenous Art, Culture, and Joyful Acts of Resistance with Tailinh Agoyo and Theresa Secord on Usala Media.
Take me out one more time is all you said to me. And I swore I heard a smile in your voice. I heard a smile.
I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. And even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. I have a mentor, Maria, and she convinced me to continue my education. Just never judges. She's a true role model.
From the depths of my heart, I thank you, Maria, for being a friend and a beautiful person. No one receives a diploma alone, and I'm honored to share this moment with you. Thank you.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Take me out one more time is all you said to me. And I swore I heard a smile.
Hi, welcome back to Rise and Thrive with Tailinh Agoyo. I'm here with a special guest, Theresa Secord, who is a basket maker from the Penobscot Nation in Maine. And Theresa is sharing with us a presentation that she'll be doing for the Abbey Museum Digital Indian Market on Saturday. Hi, Theresa.
Hi, Tailin. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Okay. So where we left off, you were showing a slide of a basket being, how do you say, being built on a form or created on a form? What's the language that you used?
Yeah, it would be a basket being woven
Woven
over
on a form. Okay.
a wooden form, and we do that here in Maine to keep the symmetry. And so I was sharing how the tools and what so much thought goes into the tools and the wooden forms, and they're such a big part of the art form here, and also in the tribes here. The community really makes the basket because we're dependent upon the men who cut the trees down, who pound the ash log, the wood, and then sell it or trade it to those of us basket makers.
Right.
Also, there are people who pick the sweetgrass at the coast and sell it by the pound to us.
Well, I have to say, last
Good
year and the
job.
year before, Jeremy Frey was at the Abbey Museum Indian Market and doing a demonstration and creating all the pieces. And it's so amazing to watch it go from the full tree, what would you say, the full bark of the tree, not the
Right.
bark, the actual, what do you call it? The stump
Yeah,
of the
it
tree?
is the wood. Yeah,
It's the wood
interior.
from the tree to these fine strips that you use ultimately to weave these baskets. And I think the majority of people really don't process that, how
Yeah.
complicated and intricate this work is.
Yes, it is. And it's also like even getting the proper ash tree in the Maine woods, trying to find the one that will be suitable for basket making is
Right.
a job. And now with the emerald
Well,
ash borer beetle, all
right.
of the
There's some
trees are
environmental
threatened.
concerns.
Big.
Yeah.
Yeah, really big. And so I don't know, it's, I've been an advocate for this art form for so long. And yet at the same time, and I'll show a picture in a minute of my son weaving with me. But at the same time, I really wonder what the future of this tradition is, so.
Yeah.
Well, so here I'm showing a basket too, a sewing basket, and it's really a tribute to my great grandmother. So there's a picture even of her in the interior of the basket on a piece of blue velvet, because a lot of the sewing notions that would have been made as part of this basket were backed with velvet. And so then also in like a split photo here, I'm showing that this basket was woven around a wooden form. So that top photo shows that. And this is purchased by a couple that have been very supportive of the basket weaving tradition, Beverly Werber and Peter Goldman, who live in Portland, and they'll probably be online Saturday. Again, supporting this Indian market, because the artists, it's a real collaboration between the artists, the museum, and the interested collectors and public.
Yes.
So another just nod to, and this is a piece I have here in my little Indian booth setup, my Indian market booth setup, but another tribute to kind of the historic way that Native people wove baskets here. And this is a glass form. And I remember as children collecting these for my great grandmother, the basket maker, who lived on the reservation. I grew up in South Portland, 150 miles south, and we would eat these beans, an 8-person family, 5 brothers, and we would save these little jars and take them up for her to weave around. And so, of course, I've learned to weave these. And what's sweet is that my late uncle actually started collecting these for me as well when my great grandmother passed and I became a basket maker. And so sadly, he just passed, my uncle, in the fall. And this is one of the vases he gave me. But he did this as well as a young man. We all of our families would collect these vases from my great grandmother to weave around. And this was part of her business. And so that's over like 100-year-old business.
It's really great
Portland,
to see
Maine.
the visual. So if you're only on audio, you should get on the
Oh.
YouTube channel and see the visuals, because
Yeah.
they're fantastic.
Yeah, this one I'm showing a photo of my son about 15 years apart. Was when he was smaller than me, and he was about 12 years old. And we call the picture on the left the year he won a first place and I won a second. So that's us in Phoenix in an Indian
That's great.
market.
That's so great.
And then on the right is a black and white photo of us from last year at the Colby College
Wow.
Museum of Art. And yeah, he's grown up. He's a weaver, and he's also a Division III swim coach, because he swam Division I at the University of Maine, and so he's a swim coach at Colby College in Waterville.
Okay.
But being a Indigenous artist too, he has been engaged in the art form with me as a boy though. And so now with the pandemic and things that have been happening, it's really caused me to think about my own priorities as an artist, as a 62-year-old woman. I want to make sure that my son is proficient in this art form for the tradition and my family and our tribe, but also for a place for these tools and this family heritage to land. And so he's kind of going back to the basics and gonna be learning with me as a formal apprentice. And
so you've been working on that during this quarantine time?
right,
Is that
yeah, we just had one session so far, and we're going to be doing some of it virtually as well. And yeah, this summer he'll be apprenticing with me pretty regularly, so we can make sure that he knows how to process the wood. And it's almost the easy part when I've prepared all the materials, and just kind of he starts weaving up the basket. But my niece is a proficient weaver, Shannon, and I've taught probably a dozen people how to make baskets, and even some of my apprentices have apprentices, and that apprentice has an apprentice. So almost like the great grandmother in some of this work. But
that's really important.
It is.
It's beautiful.
And that's very traditional here too. Like, not only, do you learn to weave and you learn to market, because again, like I pointed out earlier, selling baskets is 200 years old in the tribes here, and I don't apologize for that, because they think it's, a creative way for people to have, self-sustaining income and self-determination. And so anyway, back to his great grandfather's business card is in the photo beside one of his baskets from a couple of years ago. So,
that's fantastic.
Yeah. So pandemic time, just thinking about priorities, it gives you more time to be creative as well, and thoughtful in the art and culture. And so this was a piece that I wove last year, was in last year's Abbey Museum Indian Market. It's a small barrel basket modeled after my great grandmother's work, but also my own style on a wooden form that Jeremy Frey made for me.
The colors are just gorgeous on this basket. And how do you decide to choose your colors?
Well, it's so funny because this was inspired. It's going to sound way roundabout, but we have a place that we go to in Florida, my husband and I. And so I've become really interested in Seminole culture, because we're not far from the Seminoles where we are. I've been to the museums, and this piece was actually inspired by the colors in a beautiful Seminole skirt.
I can see that now. I see it. Yes.
Yeah, kind of turquoise, gold,
the patchwork.
Red, exactly. And beautiful applique work.
Yes.
And so I collect baskets as well. And so I'm trying to make, I'm weaving some when I'm kind of like my winter studio, even though we don't stay there all winter. We go back and forth to, part of the South Florida, basically on the east side. But I need to make it relevant, like plugging into the indigenous culture there, going to some of the events, meeting some of the artists, and it's really fun, and great weavers and artists there as well. And so this piece was at an exhibition last year too, which was really the first indigenous fine art exhibition in Maine in an art museum ever. Like previously, our work, particularly at the Abbey Museum, the Hudson Museum, Maine Historical Society, Portland Museum of Art, had been included in like the Portland Biennial, or, in these ethnographic museums, kind of in ethnographic cultural exhibitions.
Yes.
But to be exhibited in the Colby College Museum of Art was really great. And Jennifer Neptune was one of the co-curators, so Native curators.
That's so important.
And I'm on the board of governors there. And so, it's been a good thing for the art and the basketry and kind of the resurgence, and during this whole thing with the bicentennial here. So I think the last couple of pictures are just pictures of recent work. And so this is one that you were using on the advertisement of some of the work that I had with me at the Heard Museum, the Heard Guild Indian Fair and Market in Phoenix in March. And sadly, by then, the numbers were already starting to be down in these Indian markets. And I would say that was probably the last major Indian
before the whole COVID crisis came down. Yeah.
So even there, I think my sales were less than usual. The numbers of people who came to that event were lower, as a lot of people said. And then I came home and sold a couple through social media. But without these physical Indian markets, artists are really in tough shape, how to get that art out into the public.
Right. Everybody has to make a shift, try to figure it out.
So that's the last image in my PowerPoint, and just a little mini strawberry.
It's
and
beautiful.
My email for the Indian market weekend here coming up.
It's so beautiful. So let's talk about the Indian market weekend.
Okay.
How does it work? So can we pull the power? Is that the last PowerPoint?
Yes.
Okay.
So I can stop share.
Are you doing this presentation, and then will people be able to interact with you directly and look at, will you be actually showing them your work and talking to specific people? I know it's through Zoom, so technically, how does it work, or logistically?
Well, I would not have all the answers on that one, but I think what is happening is we're getting an assigned slot. So there are like maybe 15 or 20 of us, which sadly is down a significant number.
It is, because they usually have about 50 or 60 artists.
They do, yeah. And so a number of factors, you lose so much momentum when it's not on the ground, and a lot of people aren't set up to present,
to be online
visually, and for whatever reason too. I think probably when this crisis hit, people had to sell their art as immediate as possible, looking ahead and saying, I can't hold my inventory for the May Indian market anymore. And so, that's kind of too bad. But I think they're setting up a schedule that'll be online tomorrow. So people will be able to go to the Abbey Museum Facebook page. And if you do, go to the Digital Abbey Museum Indian Market event and click going. And then you'll get the notice of what time and a schedule, I think, of who's presenting when. I know my time slot, but you already just saw is at 3 p.m. So the whole show starts at 2. And I think there are going to be performances and demonstrations, and I think it'll be a lot of fun.
It sounds wonderful. And you were mentioning about First Peoples Fund and how you've worked with them for many years, and they've been an advocate for Indigenous artists. And in this time where artists are having to make a shift and get online and build websites, and they're right there, and they're flexible and available to support artists with grants and things like that. Do you want to talk about them a little bit?
Oh, sure, I do. Yeah, really nimble. And I don't know, First Peoples Fund is, just so instrumental in the lives of a lot of Native artists, like artists who apply just in normal times for our fellowships at First Peoples Fund, apply for these $5,000 Artist in Business Leadership grants or cultural capital grants. And so those would be to do like projects, like the cultural capital would be, say, if you want to mentor someone in your community. And you could be from Standing Rock and apply and mentor someone in your own community, or you could be from Maine, and basket weavers have received those grants. Artists in Business Fellowship, Jason Brown would be an example here in Maine. He and his wife have this amazing fashion business, and they're jewelers and beadworkers. And so he received a $5,000 First Peoples Fund grant, probably 4 or 5 years ago. And it really kind of helped launch his art out into the business world, where he's been an amazing jeweler, IAIA, graduate. But yet what happens too with First Peoples Fund, you come into the network of other artists and a network of support where there's a lot of, culture and heart work, like HEART. I have to train here with my Maine accent.
I got it.
Because I'm plugged into, kind of other national work and opportunities. I have been working, as an advocate and a grant writer, grant reviewer at different places. State arts commissions, for example. First Peoples Fund gives more funding to Native artists across Native North America than most states give to the artists in their states. And so I'm really proud of that, and the association. And we do business coaching and then these resilience grants, which are so important right now. First Peoples Fund was one of the first to give out. I think it's more than 50 now, but almost immediately
So
maybe
necessary.
even
And so,
100. Yeah,
mhm,
I might have the number now.
mhm,
But right away, $1,000 to artists who needed it, and so
yeah,
this is just astounding. And others, you know, are struggling to give out the first, $200 or $500.
right, right. It's
Yeah.
true. Yeah,
So
they're doing
understanding the
amazing
need.
work.
Yeah, and understanding the
Understanding the
need.
need and pivoting to fulfill those needs is really key at this time. And I think going forward, we could be in this for a long time. This is a marathon. And so, and things change by the day. So as someone who heads up an organization also, we do have to just take the temperature every day, figure out what we need to shift. You can't just stay in the old way. So it's definitely interesting to watch other organizations do that. It's great. So we're going to take a break, but when we come back, I'd love to just talk about your extensive career, what you're doing in light of the quarantine and going forward. This is Rise and Thrive with Tailinh Agoyo and Theresa Secord.
Don't wait. Communicate. Make your emergency plan today.
Take me out one more time is all you said to me. And I swore I heard a smile.
Welcome back. Share more about your outreach efforts.
Yeah, sure. And again, that's with First People's Fund through firstpeoplesfund.org. And one of the programs that I work with the FPF on is this Indigenous arts ecology work, and it's to support NCDFIs, so Native Community Development Financial Institutions, usually in large kind of rural reservation communities, and those occur in Minnesota, of course, South Dakota. First People's Fund is based in Rapid City, North Dakota, Washington State is an area, New Mexico. There's actually quite a few areas, and that's all supported through different foundations, which I won't get into. But what I love about that work is that, as you said, there are these artists who are very emerging, who sometimes don't have access to technology, but working with the tribe itself, who is, represented through these NCDFIs, that's where we're trying to have these, and we are having these artist-led movements where artists are informing the CDFI, like what kind of services they need to plug into, what are their business needs, and then we help provide the funding for that and kind of the structure too for coaching and mentoring those artists. So we have these 2-day trainings that we've conducted hundreds of, I know by now, and we have trained Native artist entrepreneur coaches who are artists, entrepreneurs, and then business entrepreneurs. And so it's kind of a great combination. But of course, like any nonprofit, First People's Fund is trying to keep all that work together and respond and be nimble to help artists where they are right now, which is in pretty desperate straits, as we talked about. So the Resilience Fund is continuing to seek support for grants, and people can donate there at firstpeoplesfund.org or on our Facebook page, First People's Fund. But also we have these resilience webinars too, and they come up, I think now we're on a schedule every other Monday. So people should plug into our Facebook page, and they're really great because I did one on the topic was how to keep like your vision as a Native artist, how to keep your vision and values central to your art practice. And they're kind of like in pandemic times.
In pandemic, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so others are talking about how to plug into social media, how to be more savvy, how to take, at social media with your art, how to take photos with your iPhone, how to get your art online. That's what most of the
sound great
webinars. And so those are free, and they're free also YouTube and Facebook Live. So people can look those up now.
It's an excellent resource. Yeah.
Artists. Yeah. And any artist. It's not just Native. So.
And especially now when we kind of have more time, it seems like we have more time or capacity to do a reset and really think about how we want to move going forward. And all of these tools are at our disposal. So it's great that they're offering it. So I'd love to, just before we have to wrap up, I want to talk about you and how you're doing during this pandemic and what you see for the future. You touched upon it a little bit, working with your son and making sure that the art form continues on. But just how are you? And what do you see for how things are and the future?
Well, it's so funny because like I'm usually talking about my work or my family, typical mother too,
Right.
But I think I'm doing well. I think I'm, enjoying the extra time to do some of my own weaving and, go a little bit deeper into some ideas that I've had too, in the past. So even having time to like experiment and look around, what other people are doing. Again, the social media, and a lot is showing up there now.
You're in your space, and so I get that. It's going to be a big loss for a while.
Yeah. So going forward, it's hard to reimagine. And the other thing too, back to these virtual Indian,
I can learn to.
A couple of things I wanted to say was, in coaching emerging artists and others who find this difficult, I just encourage people to push themselves, just like showing up at a new Indian market. We don't know, what can happen. It might be a bust. We might have good connections. But you need to show up, the museum counts on you, your collectors are looking for you. So I think I just want to say that too. People are complaining a bit about, the Indian markets going online or whatever. And I think even Swaya has a charge for the Indian market, which is
I've heard
surprising. But at the same time, they're a nonprofit. I've run an arts nonprofit. They need funding too. And we have a duty almost to show up. They have hosted us. To me, being in an Indian market is a privilege.
That is a very good perspective.
And so I'm trying to encourage people to just, and even similar with applying for relief grants or any kind of opportunities that you're not used to, try to do it, go for it, because we don't know where the next
we don't know
comfort zone is going to be for us and how we'll market and where we'll be. So, I'm pushing myself to learn new media and do, webinars and new ways.
Exactly.
We all need to be there. And that's true. The support too. Like that's what, again, back to First People's Fund, that's the family of artists that, supports each other. And that's what I love about it. And the staff is great. I got to give a shout out to Lori Poirier, the president, long-term visionary, long-term, really sister Indigenous arts organization head. So I just think there's some great work that's going on out there. And I think people need to continue to try to plug into it. Even if they don't think it's going to be good for them, you've got to try.
You got to try. I agree. Like even with We Are the Seeds, we're doing the work we normally do, but we're also moving into more creative work and sponsoring artists to create. And I think it's taking, it's just at the beginning stages, but I think it's taking us down a path that we never would have gone down had it not been us being forced into this situation.
Right.
And so there's a beauty in that.
There is.
So with the struggle and the challenge, there's always something if you keep pushing. It's not, and I'm not saying like work every day and don't stop, because there's a lot of space now for letting creativity flow and come in. But if you keep pushing a little bit every day, then it does move. It does move into something.
Right.
Something beautiful does come out of it.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's well said, and that's again what I've been saying to artists is, you know, you need to show up. You know, you really do for all the reasons we talked about.
Right. And it helps personally, just with fulfillment, personal fulfillment, and just getting up in the morning and creating something. Just one thing. Just do one thing a day for now.
Yeah,
Like
I like it.
like little, lower expectations, just little benchmarks every day, because we don't know where this is going.
Right. And good point.
Yeah. Yeah. So are you cooking? Like everybody has taken on this whole baking.
Yeah, we are. And the other thing that's fortunate for me as a Penobscot is I was able to harvest a moose last fall.
Oh,
And
okay.
so I have a brother who's in a lot of need. And so I'm able to help him out with that because it's in our freezer. And
Great.
in Maine, we lose the power a lot in the winter. So
Yes,
luckily
right.
we have a generator because it wouldn't thaw here anyway. But yeah, so we've been doing a lot of different things with moose meat, which turns out to be like the best, you know, organic meat source, and is a particularly really good one too. And so that's been good. My husband's a real active fisherman too, and so you
Do you
know,
fish also?
I do. Yeah. I pretty much just go with him to keep, you
Just
know,
be
the canoe
outside and
going or the boat
Mhm.
from grounding. But we live on a lake, which is really nice. And I have a
Nice.
camp on tribal land way up near the Canadian border, which is
Nice.
beautiful. And so, yeah, it's kind of funny. We already live in the woods on a lake and we have to go even further
You
north.
go further out.
But not much of a garden. I will say that a lot of friends are gardening, and
I've started to.
there's no gardening in the woods. So
Mm.
just too rocky here with all the
Oh, I
glacial till
see.
and everything. But yeah, so cooking and just you know, trying to keep up with the basketry too, because again, a lot of what motivates me is
Is
being in a
going out.
market. Yeah.
Right.
But a
Right.
chance to build inventory and not be on that. That's what I'm challenging myself.
Mhm.
And some of my collector friends are saying, look at it as a chance to build inventory and
Right.
not be on that kind of treadmill of saying, okay, I'm going to just weave acorns because I know they sell. You
Right.
know, get out of
Right.
that rut and say, here's an opportunity, a space,
Certainly.
you
Yeah.
know, move into this
Mhm.
space and make it new again. And I think that's, you know, that's what this, you know, presents an opportunity, but all the while staying, you know, making sure we're staying safe. And I feel for some of the tribes who've been impacted
Yes.
so badly and
Mhm.
just, you know, really tragic, and you know, making it all sound great with native art, but the real life and death
It's
issues
true.
out there are
Right.
so tragic, and I'm so sorry, and hope that everybody, you know, stays safe and tries to continue to be um you know, being careful, and hopefully the pandemic will pass as they do, and you know, will be changed and hopefully better in some way.
Hopefully we can, yeah, learn to work together and do work toward the greater good, because you're right. There are a lot of challenges and a lot of painful things happening every day. And I thank you for acknowledging that. But yeah, in our work, and you presenting this beautiful work and creating it is huge. You doing your part
Thank
to
you.
bring beauty
Appreciate that.
and um, bring beauty to the world.
Appreciate that. Yeah,
So
there's many times when it seems like our work is like old fashioned or traditional, and a
mhm,
lot of people say, you know, I prefer the contemporary, in which there are some great weavers, like I mentioned Jeremy Frey
sure,
earlier, Sarah Beeson, and others, great contemporary weavers in our tribes, and certainly my friend Carol Ermarthley Douglas is, I share a
yes,
booth with her in Santa Fe. Her
yeah,
work, and she's won the best of show too in Santa Fe. Her work is amazing, contemporary, but there's a place for all of us, I think, now,
yes,
you know, and doing the hard handwork, you know, whatever you want to call it, traditional or contemporary, we're working with our hands, we're creating with our minds and our hearts
hmm
involved too. So
and it's so important for the world. So thank you so much for joining me today. And I wish you the best of luck and this weekend at the Abbey Museum Indian Market. And Theresa, it was nice chatting with you finally.
Well. I'm so glad too. We finally had a chance to talk.
So nice.
Thank you again. It's been an honor and a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us at Rise and Thrive, Indigenous Art, Culture, and Joyful Acts of Resistance. This is Tailinh Agoyo. Thanks, Theresa.
Bye-bye.